Have you ever found yourself in a moment of quiet, maybe late at night, only to become aware of this low thrumming sound? Or distant rumble, maybe, a kind of pervasive drone that seems to be everywhere and nowhere all at once.
Mhm.
A sound you know you're hearing, but you just can't pinpoint where it's coming from. And maybe you ask someone else, do you hear that? And they just look at you blankly. They hear nothing.
Right.
Now, imagine that feeling, but it's persistent, it's invasive, and it's utterly unexplainable. That's what we're diving into today. Welcome to the deep dive into the phenomenon known simply as the hum.
That's right. The hum is genuinely one of the most puzzling phenomena of, well, our modern world. It's this persistent, very low-frequency noise. People describe it differently, sometimes a humming, sometimes more of a rumbling or just a droning sound in the background.
Okay.
But what makes it so incredibly enigmatic and, frankly, quite unsettling for those who experience it, is that it's profoundly audible to thousands, literally thousands of people around the globe.
Thousands.
Yet, crucially, it's completely inaudible to the vast majority of others. Even someone standing right next to a person who hears it might hear absolutely nothing.
And this isn't just like a quaint local legend tied to one specific spooky old house, right? We're talking about credible reports spanning continents.
Oh, absolutely. The US, the UK, Australia, Canada, Germany. The list goes on. Reports pop up all over. But here's the paradox right at the start, and it's a really crucial insight we need to unpack today.
Okay.
While the hum is reported globally, it doesn't seem to be one single unified thing with one single cause. It's more like a collection of mysteries, maybe, rather than one big one.
Okay, so not the hum, but maybe hums. Different locations, potentially different sources, but similar experiences.
Precisely. It's like a mosaic of similar auditory experiences. They're often linked by that low-frequency nature and by that really profoundly selective way they're perceived. But these individual hums aren't necessarily tied to some shared origin point. And that makes the task of identifying a single solution incredibly complex and often, frustratingly elusive.
Right. So on this deep dive, our mission is pretty clear. We're going to try and unpack what this elusive sound actually is, in its various forms. We'll explore the huge range and often contradictory scientific theories that people have put forward. Everything from, say, industrial culprits, hidden military activities maybe, to the really fascinating possibility that the sound might actually be generated from, well, within our own bodies.
Which is a wild thought in itself.
It is. And maybe most fascinatingly, we'll delve into how something so subtle, so often unheard by most people, can have such a profound and sometimes honestly devastating cultural impact. How it fuels urban legends, sparks genuine health scares, drives these relentless local investigations, and just fosters this enduring sense of modern mystery.
Yeah, and our goal today is really to help you, our listener, sort of sift through this complex web of information. We want to pull out the most compelling insights, try to help you gain a clearer but still comprehensive picture of this fascinating, often unexplained anomaly. It's about understanding not just what people are experiencing, but maybe why this phenomenon continues to defy easy answers and, capture our collective imagination.
Think of this as a journey into the weird things our world can produce, and maybe even more surprisingly, what our own bodies can produce and perceive. It's a potential aha moment waiting to happen, whether you've maybe heard something like the hum yourself, or you're just learning about this global enigma for the first time. So let's begin. Let's start our sonic detective work.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's try and unpack this unseen chorus, as it were. What exactly is the hum? And maybe even more importantly, how do we even start defining something that so many people can't hear?
Yeah, that's the fundamental challenge. Broadly speaking, it's characterized as a low-frequency noise. Imagine the lowest rumble you can almost feel rather than really hear, like that distant thrum of a big diesel engine idling somewhere just out of sight, maybe down the road.
Okay, yeah, I can picture that.
Early research, there was a university report back in 1973, documented about 50 individual cases. They found that this sound often peaks somewhere between 30 and 40 hertz. Now, to put that in perspective, typical human hearing runs from about 20 hertz up to 20,000 hertz.
Right.
So 30, 40 hertz is really down there at the deep resonant end of what we can perceive. And people consistently described it as a low throbbing background noise or, uncannily like the constant hum of a diesel engine.
That diesel engine comparison comes up a lot.
It does. And that initial study also noted some intriguing, almost I don't know, poetic patterns. It was typically heard during cool weather, maybe with a light breeze, often early in the morning, and it seems confined to a relatively small area, usually about 10 kilometers, maybe 6 miles wide.
Interesting. So specific conditions seem to matter.
The consistent environmental conditions suggest a sensitivity that, isn't typical of just general noise pollution. It hints at something more specific happening.
So it's not just this constant unchanging drone that appears out of thin air.
Yeah.
It has specific characteristics, almost like it's responding to or maybe being influenced by certain environmental factors. But the really baffling part, as you said, is who hears it, right? Because
Yeah.
it's definitely not everybody. That auditory selectivity is, well, it's a huge paradox.
Absolutely. That auditory selectivity is perhaps its most defining characteristic. And yeah, deeply unsettling for those involved. It fundamentally sets it apart from typical widespread noise pollution. I mean, think about it. If it were just some industrial hum blanketing an entire area, well, everyone would hear it, right?
Sure, yeah. The fact that only a select few are tormented by it, that's what deepens the mystery. And it's what leads to so many varied theories we'll get into.
Which brings us to some of the global hotspots where the hum has really made its mark. Places where it's captivated researchers and, frankly, tormented residents. The first one that always seems to come up is the iconic Taos Hum in New Mexico. What made that particular case so remarkable? What did we learn from it?
Ah, Taos. Yeah, that gained significant national attention back in the early 1990s, and it was really instrumental in highlighting the selectivity. A pretty comprehensive study was done there, and it found that only about 2% of the local population could hear it.
Wow, okay, just 2%. That's tiny.
Think about that. In a whole community, only 1 in 50 people are experiencing this persistent, disturbing sound, while the other 49 are just completely oblivious.
That must create such a strange social dynamic, isolation, maybe disbelief. Totally. And here's where it gets really fascinating, digging into the data. Each hearer, right, they experienced it at a slightly different frequency. The range was from 32 hertz up to 80 hertz.
So not even the same sound for everyone who could hear it.
Exactly. And it wasn't static either. It was modulated, meaning it fluctuated subtly, pulsing almost, between zero point 0.5 and 2 hertz, like a very slow, deep pulse. This implies a highly personalized auditory experience. It suggests a really complex interplay, maybe between some external source and the individual's own perception or physiology.
So it wasn't just a hum, it was almost their specific hum in a way.
Wow.
And you mentioned some people could actually escape it,
Yeah.
like physically move away from it. That seems really important, suggesting it's not just, in their heads, like tinnitus or something.
Yes, that's another fascinating and crucial detail from Taos. One hearer reported that its range seemed to be about 30 miles or 48 kilometers. They could literally drive away from it and eventually find silence. That strongly suggests it's not purely an internal brain-generated thing for all sufferers. It points towards something with a distinct geographical footprint, even if the source itself remained elusive.
Right, a boundary.
And the demographic data from Taos also revealed something quite specific, adding another layer. There were roughly equal percentages of male and female hearers. Okay, fine. But middle-aged individuals were notably more likely to report hearing it.
Huh. Middle-aged, not older, not younger specifically.
Not primarily, no, mostly middle-aged. This certainly complicates any simple biological or age-related explanation, doesn't it? It just adds another layer to the enigma of who hears the hum and why.
Equal percentages male-female, but more middle-aged. Yeah, that is a very specific breakdown for such a mysterious thing. A real head-scratcher. Okay, so our journey into the hum global footprint now takes us north, across the border to the Windsor Hum in Ontario, Canada. That one had a truly astonishing impact, didn't it? The scale was different.
Oh, the Windsor hum was. Yeah, it was practically a public health crisis. It was a massive public concern. Starting around late 2011, residents began reporting this persistent, low, droning vibration. It just pervaded their homes, their lives. People said it was sometimes loud enough to be incredibly irritating, causing sleep disruption, real anxiety, a profound sense of unease. And get this figure. On one single evening in 2012, Canadian officials received an astounding 22,000 reports from residents tormented by the sound.
22,000 reports in one evening.
22,000.
That's unbelievable.
But
That's an incredible number of people experiencing something that others, maybe even their next-door neighbors, might be completely unaware of. The sheer scale of that public distress, It must have been overwhelming for the authorities, let alone the residents.
It was, and the geography here was crucial, and it became a source of, well, significant geopolitical frustration, actually.
How so?
It was widely suspected, almost from the start, that the sound was emanating from across the Detroit River from Zug Island. That's a heavily industrialized section of River Rouge in Detroit.
Ah, so U.S. territory.
Exactly. Canadian officials repeatedly asked for U.S. assistance to pinpoint the source, to get access to the island for investigation, but they were consistently, well, stymied. Refusals to allow access to the private industrial facilities there.
Seriously, they wouldn't let them investigate the suspected source.
Nope. And this difficulty, this inability to access what was so strongly suspected to be the source, it just fueled the mystery, the public frustration, and this growing sense of helplessness among the people in Windsor who were suffering.
God, that sounds infuriating.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands of people being tormented, and the suspected source is right there, across the water, tantalizingly close, but completely off limits. That's incredibly unsettling. But in a rare moment of clarity for the Hum, they did eventually figure out what was happening on Zug Island, didn't they? There was a resolution.
They did, eventually, yes. And this is what makes the Windsor Hum a rare, relatively conclusive case study in the world of hums. What happened was the U.S. steel blast furnaces on Zug Island were deactivated in April 2020. Now, this was apparently driven by economic factors, nothing to do with the hum itself. But as soon as those furnaces went cold, reports of the noise from Windsor residents just stopped, ceased.
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that. It provides really powerful, tangible evidence that, at least in this specific major instance, the hum was directly linked to industrial operations, human activity. It's one of the very few times we've seen such a clear cause and effect relationship for a widely reported hum.
That's a huge breakthrough, really.
Right.
A concrete answer for one of these major hums. But, as you alluded to earlier, not all cases get wrapped up so neatly, do they?
Oh.
We've also heard mentions of the Auckland hum down in New Zealand.
Correct. That was back in 2006. Tom Moore, who was then at Massey University in Auckland, he embarked on his own investigation. He actually made several recordings that he believed captured the Auckland hum.
He recorded it.
He believed so. His research involved acoustic analysis, trying to simulate the sound, and his work indicated that this particular hum was around 56 hertz, so a slightly different frequency again. It wasn't as high profile, maybe, or as conclusively resolved as Taos or Windsor, but it definitely adds another pin to the global map of this phenomenon. And it shows individuals trying to scientifically document and understand these sounds, often on their own initiative.
And the reports just keep coming in from other places too, right? This isn't just some historical curiosity from the 90s or the early 2000s. It's ongoing.
Absolutely. It's an enduring presence. More recently, 2021, hums were reported in Frankfurt and Darmstadt in Germany. The Darmstadt case is particularly interesting because after a pretty extensive local investigation by city officials and experts, they actually identified multiple specific sources.
Multiple sources for one hum.
Yeah, contributing to the overall noise problem in Darmstadt, they found 2 faulty air conditioner units, a faulty heat pump, and even get this 3 structural noise protection measures on energy generation plants that were, ironically, failing in creating the very noise they were supposed to suppress.
Oh, the irony. Noise suppressors making noise.
Exactly. So again, this points to mundane, localized industrial sources in some cases. It really highlights the diverse origins that these perceived hums can have. And even more recently, persistent hums were reported in St. Louis County, Missouri in 2022, and Omagh, Northern Ireland, just last year in 2023. It just underscores that this phenomenon continues to be a widespread, enduring presence, perpetually challenging our understanding.
So after hearing about all these global cases, Taos, Windsor, Auckland, Darmstadt, what really stands out to you as the most perplexing or maybe even, unsettling truth when we talk about who hears it, it keeps coming back to that first point.
Yeah.
How can thousands of people hear something that the vast majority, even in the exact same place, cannot?
That is the core question, isn't it? That auditory selectivity is what truly defines the hum phenomenon. It's what fundamentally separates it from just background noise or typical environmental noise pollution. And it creates this very unique and often deeply distressing social dynamic. I mean, imagine experiencing something so profound and disturbing, something that literally invades your home, your life.
Yeah.
Only to have the vast majority of people around you, your family, your neighbors, maybe even local authorities, completely oblivious to it. Or worse, maybe dismissive of your experience.
It must be incredibly isolating.
Immensely. It leads to frustration, disbelief, this relentless search for answers that often have to go beyond the obvious explanations. This fundamental, inexplicable mystery. It's what paves the way for the myriad of scientific and sometimes speculative theories we're about to dive into. It's like the silent scream of an unseen problem.
Okay, so what does all this mean for the people actually trying to find the source? If it's not one single thing, then the search must be incredibly complex. Almost like a forensic investigation, but with very limited, very confusing clues. Let's put on our sound detective hats now and unpack some of these scientific theories, and they're often frustrating limitations.
Indeed. And the natural inclination, right, given how it sounds, is to immediately look for an industrial suspect. After all, so many descriptions point to something mechanical.
Right, because the hum often sounds remarkably like a machine, specifically that comparison to a diesel engine or some kind of heavy machinery running constantly. It seems like the most obvious candidate, the low-hanging fruit for any investigation. But you mentioned earlier that most reported hums haven't actually been traced to a specific, identifiable mechanical source, which is frankly pretty frustrating if you're one of the people living with it day in, day out.
Exactly. And this is where you see the sheer dedication, sometimes bordering on obsession, of individuals who take matters into their own hands. Take Steve Kohlhaas, for example. He's an industrial facilities mechanical engineer.
Okay.
He was so personally affected and just intellectually intrigued by the phenomenon that he spent a staggering $30,000 of his own money on legal fees and specialized equipment for his independent investigation into low-frequency hums across various locations.
$30,000. Wow.
Yeah. His 10-year journey, which is a real testament to the personal toll the hum can take, was even featured in a 2019 documentary called Doom Vibrations. Kohlhaas's theory, based on all the cases he painstakingly studied, was that the locations were consistently along or very close to high-pressure gas pipelines.
Gas pipelines. Interesting.
He believed that some kind of unseen resonance or vibration within these massive infrastructure networks was the underlying cause in many of the instances he looked at.
That's an incredible personal investment for an independent investigation. It really speaks volumes about the desperation, maybe, and the dedication of those trying to find answers, especially when official channels might fall short. Now, you mentioned some cases where a source was found, or at least strongly suspected. Can you walk us through those? They seem like rare glimpses of clarity.
Certainly, and they offer some hope, right? One prominent and satisfying example is the West Seattle hum. That particular hum was successfully traced to a specific piece of equipment, a vacuum pump at a company called Cal Portland. It was used specifically to offload cargo from ships, think big industrial vessels being emptied at the dock. And crucially, after Cal Portland replaced the silencers on this machine, which were presumably worn out or maybe just insufficient, reports of the hum in the surrounding area simply stopped. Gone.
A clear win. That's great.
That's a clear-cut, successful identification and resolution. Huge relief for the affected community, you can imagine.
Absolutely. A rare and welcome victory for the sound detectives.
Indeed. Another case, the Wellington hum in New Zealand, was thought to be due to the powerful diesel generator on a visiting ship. Specifically, Singapore's frigate, the Stalwart.
A warship.
Yeah. Now, while it wasn't definitively proven through, say, turning the generator off and seeing if the hum stopped, the timing of the ship's presence and the nature of the sound strongly implicated the vessel.
Okay, strong correlation.
Strong correlation. And of course, we talked about the Windsor hum earlier. That one, upon the deactivation of the U.S. steel blast furnaces on Zug Island in 2020, also ceased. So these cases, though distinct, they offer a glimmer of hope. They show that sometimes a concrete, human-caused, anthropogenic source can be found and even fixed. It proves the search isn't always in vain.
But then you have cases that completely throw a wrench in that nice, neat, satisfying narrative of just finding the broken machine. The Myrtle Beach hum comes to mind as a particularly unique and frustrating example.
Yes, the Myrtle Beach case is quite unique, and it really highlights how complex these issues can become and how deeply they can affect people's lives, leading to serious conflict. There was a local couple there, understandably tormented by a persistent hum. They suspected it originated from a Santee Cooper substation, which was almost 2 miles away from their home.
2 miles. That seems quite far for a hum to travel and be annoying.
It does. But this substation houses the state's largest transformer. They believe that was the source of a distinct 60 hertz hum, which is, a common frequency associated with electrical grids.
Right, the mains hum?
Exactly. But what's truly fascinating, and what actually led to a legal battle, is that they claimed the hum was louder inside their house than outside.
Louder inside. How does that work?
Their theory was that their house itself was vibrating in resonance with the hum, essentially acting like a giant amplifier or a sound box. They even sued the power company, Santee Cooper, claiming the volume inside their home reached up to a startling 64.1 decibels because of this resonant vibration.
64 decibels. That's not a quiet background hum. That's the volume of a normal conversation or maybe a window air conditioner. Imagine trying to live with that constant internal vibration in your own home. It's not just a sound at that point. It feels like a physical assault on your sanctuary. That really underscores the serious impact these sounds can have, leading to lengthy, costly legal battles just to find some peace. But then we have the truly frustrating cases, the ones where apparent fixes were tried, but they failed. Or even worse, they just raised more questions than answers. The Kokomo hum in Indiana seems like a prime example of this perplexing persistence.
Oh, the Kokomo case is one of the most frustrating. And for those actually experiencing the hum, maybe one of the most unsettling narratives out there. Initially, researchers were pretty confident. They believed they had definitively traced the origin of the Kokomo hum to two specific industrial sources within the city.
Two sources again.
Two sources. One was identified as a 36 hertz tone, thought to be coming from a cooling tower at the local Daimler-Chrysler casting plant. The second was a 10 hertz tone, traced to an air compressor intake at the Haynes International plant. There was a real sense initially that, okay, mystery solved.
Right, so they identified the sources, pinpointed the frequencies. Presumably they took action, right? They corrected them, believing the problem was solved. This sounds like it should have been another victory, like Windsor or West Seattle.
That's the crucial, unsettling twist in Kokomo. The devices were indeed corrected. Engineers went in, they implemented modifications, they did noise abatement, believing they had silenced the culprits. However, reports of the hum persisted even after these supposed fixes were implemented.
Oh no, so it wasn't them, or not just them.
Exactly. It fundamentally challenges the idea of a simple, single mechanical explanation for all hums. If you fix the presumed source, the one that perfectly matches the frequency you're measuring, and the problem doesn't go away, then what else could possibly be happening?
Wow.
It leaves you with far more questions than answers. And it casts this profound doubt on the notion that every hum has a straightforward, identifiable industrial origin just waiting to be found. It's almost as if the hum itself is, I don't know, playing a game of hide and seek or shifting its source.
That's incredibly frustrating for the people experiencing it. It must make you wonder if there's something more going on, something, well, maybe deliberately hidden. And that kind of leads us towards the more speculative theories, doesn't it? The sort of unseen battlefield theories like military activity or other hidden anthropogenic sources. David Deming, a researcher who's delved into this, has some intriguing ideas here.
He did. David Deming, in his research, he speculated that the military's Takamo system could potentially be a source for some hums.
Takamo, what's that?
For those unfamiliar, Takamo stands for Take Charge and Move Out. It's a specialized military communication system. It uses very low-frequency VLF or extremely low-frequency ELF radio waves broadcast from aircraft specifically to communicate with submerged submarines. It ensures a secure communication link even during, extreme global circumstances.
Okay, so super low-frequency radio waves from planes docking to subs. How does that connect to the hum?
Well, Deming's reasoning was pretty compelling on the surface. If the source of the hum is actually moving aircraft broadcasting these low frequencies, it would certainly explain the profound difficulty people have in locating a stationary source on the ground, because the source is constantly in motion, maybe miles up.
That's actually a pretty clever way to explain the elusiveness. It's hard to trace a signal if the transmitter's always moving around unpredictably. But did he find any definitive proof linking Takamo aircraft to specific hum reports?
Well, he noted that while it's an interesting and plausible theory, there have apparently never been any reports of the hum specifically around the U.S. Navy's known stationary VLFEL broadcast stations, like the ones at Cutler, Maine, and Jim Creek, Washington.
So if the frequencies themselves were the issue, you'd expect hums near the big fixed transmitters too.
You might expect that, yeah. If the Takamo system itself, the frequency, was the definitive cause, you might anticipate some hum reports clustering around those fixed locations that are constantly emitting these powerful signals. And apparently that hasn't happened. So this creates a significant caveat to the theory. It keeps it in the realm of intriguing speculation rather than, confirmed explanation.
Okay, so a plausible theory, but with a major logical gap. Interesting. But Deming also made another fascinating observation, didn't he? One that adds another layer, maybe an even more unsettling layer, to this whole mystery.
Yes, and this is perhaps one of the most intriguing and indeed kind of spooky observations he made. Deming found it significant that the hum, as he put it, often seems to avoid publicity.
Avoids publicity, what does that mean?
He noted a pattern where reports of a local hum often appear to subside or sometimes even vanish entirely in response to increased local press coverage or focused public attention on it.
Wait, so when people start investigating it and talking about it, it stops.
That's the pattern he observed in some cases. He speculated that this might be a sign that the source is anthropogenic, human-caused in nature. And if it's human-caused, and it seems to shy away from scrutiny, well, it could subtly imply deliberate activity, perhaps even suggesting a desire for concealment by whoever or whatever is generating it.
Whoa.
Now, we have to remain impartial here, right? We're not endorsing any particular conspiracy theory, but the observation itself, just the pattern, when you hear it, it absolutely fuels speculation about a hidden, maybe even actively concealed source. It taps right into that very human fascination with secrets, with things operating just beneath the surface of our awareness. It's a truly perplexing pattern to consider. Is something or someone actively trying not to be detected?
The idea that something or someone is actively trying not to be detected. Yeah, that just adds another deep, almost conspiratorial layer to this already baffling puzzle. It almost feels like a character in a spy novel, this meant. Okay, but let's shift gears a bit. Because not all the theories point outwards towards factories or secret military projects. Some of the most compelling, and for many, perhaps the most personal explanations, suggest the sound might actually be coming from within us. Let's talk about the biological and physiological side of things. Tinnitus is often brought up in these discussions, isn't it?
It is, and for good reason. Tinnitus is a widely recognized medical condition. It's defined as a self-reported disturbance of the auditory system, meaning the sound ringing, buzzing, hissing, sometimes humming, is generated internally by the auditory and nervous systems. There's no external stimulus causing it.
Okay.
So understandably, some physicians do use this diagnosis for people complaining about hearing a persistent hum, especially when no external source can be readily found. It seems like a logical fit initially.
Right. If someone complains about a constant hum only they can hear, a doctor might understandably say, okay, it sounds like you have a form of tinnitus. But there are crucial nuances to that diagnosis, aren't there? Things that often differentiate the reported experience of the hum from typical tinnitus.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets really complicated and pushes back against the simple tinnitus explanation for everyone. While some researchers hypothesize the hum could be a specific form of low-frequency tinnitus, maybe similar to something called a venous hum, which is a real low-frequency sound caused by turbulent blood flow in the jugular vein, sometimes audible with a stethoscope.
Okay.
Many hearers of the hum report it as distinctly external. They'll insist it's coming from outside. They might say it's worse indoors than out, or maybe equally bad everywhere. And here's where it becomes even more unsettling and counterintuitive. Some sufferers report that traditional soundproofing measures, things like installing double-glazed windows or adding thick insulation to walls, actually make the hum worse.
Worse? How can soundproofing make a noise worse?
Because the soundproofing effectively reduces all the other ambient environmental background noise. The traffic outside, the neighbor's lawnmower, the wind, all that gets quieter. And in that newfound silence, the subtle, persistent hum, whether it's truly internal or some elusive external sound, becomes far more apparent. It essentially screams through the quiet.
Right.
This directly contradicts the idea that it's purely external noise pollution that you can just block out. And it really amplifies the mystery of its perception, leading to profound distress for the hearer who feels like they can't escape it, even in a soundproofed room.
That's quite a paradox.
Yeah.
Trying to block out the noise only makes the noise you're desperately trying to block more obvious. Imagine the sheer frustration of spending money and effort trying to create peace only to have this unseen enemy amplified. It's almost cruelly ironic, isn't it? So, okay, if the hum isn't purely external industrial noise and it doesn't always fit neatly into the traditional tinnitus box, are there other ways our own bodies might be generating these kinds of sounds? It turns out our ears hold a surprising secret.
They do, and it's a truly fascinating fact about human hearing that most people aren't aware of. Our ears can actually generate their own noises internally. These are called spontaneous otoacoustic emissions, or SOAEs for short.
Spontaneous otoacoustic emissions.
Okay. These are faint sounds produced by the inner ear itself, sort of like an echo generated by the delicate hair cells vibrating in the cochlea as they do their job. And studies have shown that somewhere between 38% and 60% of adults with perfectly normal hearing actually have these SOAEs.
60%.
That many, yeah, potentially up to 60%. Though, crucially, most people are completely unaware they're happening. Those who do perceive them typically experience a very faint hissing, buzzing, or maybe a ringing sound, especially in conditions of extreme quiet when there's no other ambient noise to mask them. This phenomenon, SOAEs, was considered a significant possibility for explaining some of the cases in the Taos Hum study. It suggests that for some individuals, the perceived noise might indeed be coming from within their own body, a byproduct of their own auditory system, rather than any external source in the environment.
So for maybe almost two-thirds of us listening right now, our ears are like little sound factories, constantly generating faint noises, and we just don't notice it most of the time. That's incredible. But if it's an internal sound, like an SOE, how do you reconcile that with people saying that they can literally move away from the hum and find silence? Like that person in Taos who could drive 30 miles away from it. That's the challenge again, isn't it? The same basic symptom, hearing a hum, but vastly different reported experiences surrounding it.
Precisely. No single biological explanation, whether it's low-frequency tinnitus or SOAEs, seems to fit every reported case. They can explain some experiences, perhaps, but not others, like the ability to move away from it. This is why the mystery endures, and it's why many researchers now suspect it's probably not one thing, but maybe a combination of factors, perhaps a convergence of a subtle external stimulus that most people don't notice, combined with an individual's unique physiological sensitivity or even psychological state.
The perfect storm, maybe.
Could be. But it's not just our bodies or human industry that have been considered. Some have even looked to the natural world for answers, proposing theories that involve everything from the atmosphere itself down to, believe it or not, marine life. The jet stream, for instance, that was an early one.
Yeah, I recall Philip Dickinson suggested way back in 1973 that the 30 to 40 hertz hum could be caused by the jet stream shearing against slower moving air miles above us, possibly amplified by things like vibrating power line posts or even resonant rooms, turning our whole environment into this giant unintentional low-frequency instrument. Sounds kind of epic, almost poetic in scale.
Well, while the idea of a massive atmospheric phenomenon producing a low-frequency hum is certainly compelling on a conceptual level, Jeff Leventhal, who we mentioned earlier, the acoustics expert from Chelsea College, he had a rather blunt dismissal of that particular theory. He basically called it absolute nonsense.
Ouch, okay.
He argued, pretty convincingly, that the mechanics of air currents, even something as powerful as the jet stream, simply don't generate coherent, persistent, low-frequency sounds that could travel in the way the hum is described, or be selectively heard by only certain people. It just doesn't line up with the physics of acoustics. So this illustrates the kind of rigorous skepticism and scientific scrutiny some of these less empirically grounded theories face, especially when they lack strong physical or acoustic evidence.
Duly noted. So probably no giant atmospheric string instrument playing the world's deepest note for us.
Okay, what about animals then? Could the natural world, specifically marine life, be potential culprits? It sounds almost like something out of a science fiction plot or maybe a weird nature documentary.
It's a fascinating idea, and it actually has a really compelling precedent. The midshipman fish, also known colloquially as a toadfish because of the sound it makes, was considered a very serious possible cause of the West Seattle hum we discussed earlier.
A fish. Yes. And for good reason. There was a very similar hum reported years prior down in Sausalito, California, that was definitively determined to be the distinctive, prolonged mating call of the male midshipman fish.
No way. The fish were humming.
They produced this incredibly loud, low-frequency hum to attract mates, and in that specific Sausalito case, the hum was resonating powerfully through the hulls of houseboats in the bay. It effectively turned the boats into giant speakers, profoundly affecting the people living on them. It was the clear, confirmed biological source for that hum.
A fish choir disrupting sleep in Sausalito.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's almost quirky explanation.
Yeah.
But did it pan out for West Seattle? Was it fish there too?
Unfortunately, no. While the midshipman fish provided this compelling biological precedent, a University of Washington researcher carefully studied the West Seattle case. They looked at the geography, the distances involved. They concluded it was highly improbable that such a hum, even if present in the water and transmitted via tanker or boat hulls, could travel far enough inland to account for the numerous reports they were getting from people living quite far from the shoreline.
The physics didn't work out.
The physics of sound transmission, especially through ground, just didn't support it reaching those distances and affecting so many people in diverse locations away from the water. It really illustrates how an explanation that works perfectly in one very specific context, like Sausalito's houseboats right on the water, doesn't necessarily translate to another broader scenario like West Seattle.
Right. Context is key.
Exactly. And there was also the case of Hythe in Hampshire, over in the UK. A sonic fish was hypothesized there as the cause of a nocturnal humming sound that was bothering residents. However, the local council ultimately deemed this unlikely, mainly because the types of fish known to make such sounds aren't commonly found in significant numbers in UK inshore waters. Though the Hythe hum was recorded, its specific source remains unlocated to this day. So while compelling, animal sources, like industrial sources, rarely provide the complete universal answer for these enduring global phenomena.
Man, it really feels like a sound detective's nightmare, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's a new suspect around every corner. Faulty pumps, secret military planes, resonant houses, your own ears, humming fish, but rarely a conviction that truly holds up across all the different cases. These theories, while incredibly varied and often fascinating, all seem to share one common thread.
Right.
The frustrating lack of a universal, definitive explanation for the hum. It just leaves so many questions unanswered. It's crystal clear from all this that living with the hum, especially when it goes unexplained and it feels like nobody else hears it or believes you, takes a significant personal toll. What kind of impact does this pervasive, elusive sound actually have on individuals? And what, if anything, can be done? What treatment is available for something that may or may not even be external?
You're absolutely right. The distress it causes can be immense. It can be genuinely life-altering for some people. For those who experience it intensely, it's definitely not just a minor annoyance. It can severely impact their quality of life. We're talking chronic sleep disruption, which affects everything else.
Oh, yeah.
Profound anxiety, difficulty concentrating at work or home, and yeah, even social isolation if they feel their complaints are constantly dismissed or ridiculed.
That sounds awful.
It is. David Bagley, a leading researcher in this area from the University of Salford, focused his research less on trying to treat the sound itself because, as we've seen, often no definitive external source can be found or fixed, but more on minimizing the distress the sound causes.
Okay, managing the reaction.
Exactly. His work centered on using psychological approaches, things like relaxation techniques, mindfulness. The core idea is that by reducing the individual's stress response to the perceived noise, it could, over time, lead to a subjective quieting or even a removal of the perceived sound, or at the very least, a significant reduction in its negative impact on their life.
So it's about changing your relationship with the sound, managing how you react to it internally, rather than necessarily finding and physically eliminating an external source that might not even be there or might be impossible to find. That's a fascinating, almost counterintuitive approach to what seems like an auditory problem.
Exactly. And Jeff Leventhal, the noise and vibration expert we mentioned earlier, he strongly suggested cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, as being particularly effective for coping with hums. He put it very simply, very eloquently, I thought. He said, "It's a question of whether you tense up to the noise or are relaxed about it. The CBT was shown to work by helping people to take a different attitude to it."
Changing your attitude to the noise.
It really highlights the significant psychological component involved in coping with an ambiguous, pervasive sound like this.
Yeah.
Even if the hum does have a genuine external source in some cases, which it certainly seems to for many people, managing one's internal reaction and perception of it is absolutely paramount for regaining a sense of control and improving overall well-being. It's a powerful testament, really, to the mind-body connection in how we experience sensory input.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when you think about the unresolved nature of so many of these cases. You know, people can't just move away from a constant internal torment or even an external one they can't locate. Speaking of which, the hum has spurred countless local investigations, citizen science efforts, and even, as we heard, actual legal battles. This demonstrates the very real, often financially burdensome efforts people undertake just to find answers and get some relief. Can you give us a broader sense of these real-world efforts to find solutions?
Oh, the dedication and yeah, the immense frustration involved are just palpable when you look at case after case. We've talked about the meticulous study done in Taos. We discussed the Canadian officials' exhaustive, though initially stymied, attempts in Windsor before the Zug Island source was finally accidentally confirmed.
Right.
In Darmstadt, Germany, their lengthy and collaborative investigation eventually did pinpoint multiple, albeit mundane, sources like those faulty AC units and heat pumps. So that was a success story, but it took a lot of persistence. But then you have individuals like Steve Kohlhaas, the engineer who spent $30,000 of his own money becoming a one-man hum detective agency, driven by his own experience. Or you have the Myrtle Beach couple who actually took the massive step of suing Santee Cooper, the power company, because they were so convinced that the huge substation was the undeniable source of their suffering and the vibrations literally shaking their home.
Yeah.
These aren't just academic exercises or curious little anecdotes in a newspaper. These are serious, often devastating, real-world impacts that drive people to extraordinary lengths. They sacrifice time, money, peace of mind, just in this relentless quest for solutions, for answers, for quiet.
These personal sagas of investigation and legal action really underscore the profound, life-altering impact the hum can have. It's clearly not just some curious scientific phenomenon to be debated in journals. It's something that demands answers. And when those answers aren't forthcoming or they're not definitive, it naturally starts to fuel, well, urban legends.
Yeah.
It takes on a certain paranormal allure almost. It becomes this enduring, unsettling, modern mystery.
It absolutely does. And here, it feels like we circle back again to David Deming's intriguing observation, the one we discussed earlier about potential military sources. His belief that the hum often avoids publicity, seeming to subside or vanish when there's an increase in local press coverage or focused public attention.
Right, the publicity-shy hum.
Exactly. Now, again, as impartial observers, we certainly don't endorse any particular viewpoint or conspiracy theory here, but that observation itself, just the pattern he noted, when you consider it, it absolutely fuels speculation about a hidden or maybe deliberately concealed anthropogenic source. It taps right into that very human fascination with secrets, with things operating just beneath the surface of our awareness. The idea that something or someone is deliberately operating under the radar, trying not to be found. It's a truly unsettling pattern to consider, regardless of the actual explanation. Is there something actively trying not to be found? Or is it merely a coincidence? Maybe a reflection of our own intense focus fading over time. We just don't know.
That's the kind of thought that definitely keeps you up at night, isn't it? It transforms it from just a sound into a potential secret, a potential cover-up. And maybe because of that enduring mystery, because of its elusive nature and its profound, sometimes scary impact, the hum has truly permeated popular culture. It shows just how deeply it's gripped our collective imagination across all sorts of media.
Oh, absolutely. The elusive nature of the hum makes for inherently compelling storytelling, doesn't it? It's perfectly suited for tapping into our deep-seated fascination with the unexplained, with the idea that there's more to reality than meets the eye, or in this case, more than meets the ear for most people.
We've seen it explored across so many different media, haven't we? On television, for instance, it seems like a natural fit for mystery shows.
Definitely. It's been featured on shows like Unsolved Mysteries, which makes perfect sense given its, well, unsolved nature. More famously, perhaps, in a 1998 episode of The X-Files, the classic show for unexplained phenomena, an episode titled Drive, Agent Mulder himself, the ultimate seeker of weird truths. He speculated that extremely low-frequency ELF radio waves may be behind the so-called Taos Hum. That single line immediately elevated the hum in the public consciousness, linking it to this realm of high-tech, maybe government conspiracy-type mystery. It powerfully influenced how a whole generation might perceive it, adding this layer of potentially sinister scientific intrigue.
And it got even darker, much more psychologically disturbing in an episode of Criminal Minds, didn't it?
Yes, that was quite a chilling turn. In a 2018 episode of Criminal Minds, the actual storyline involved characters committing violent acts due to a state of mania that was explicitly caused by the hum.
Wow, the hum made them violent.
In the fictional narrative, yes. The story editors themselves even described that episode as having an X-Files feel, deliberately playing on that sense of an unseen, mysterious force driving extreme human behavior. Now, obviously, this is purely fictional, let's be clear, but it represents a truly significant and unsettling twist in the cultural narrative surrounding the hum. The terrifying idea that this low-frequency noise could actually induce psychological distress so severe that it triggers irrational or even violent behavior. It's a chilling thought that really reflects our deepest anxieties about unseen influences messing with our minds.
Yeah, from mysterious radio waves and X-Files to actual mania and violence in criminal minds. The Hum certainly covers a lot of ground in fiction, from speculative science right through to psychological horror. And it didn't stop there in television, did it? It popped up in animation, too.
Yeah. Not at all. In a 2022 episode of the popular animated series American Dad, an episode called Echoes, the character Avery Bullock, voiced by the iconic Patrick Stewart, he muses about a mysterious background hum that several characters report hearing throughout the episode. It just shows how the hum has seeped into even comedic formats, becoming this recognizable cultural trope for something weird and unexplainable going on.
Right. And beyond the screen, the hum has made its way into literature as well, further embedding itself in our collective consciousness, inspiring novelists.
Jordan Tannehill's acclaimed 2021 novel, The Listeners, is a really prominent and compelling example. It tells this engrossing story of a group of ordinary people who become tormented by a continuous humming noise that seemingly only they can hear. It profoundly impacts their lives, their relationships, their sanity.
Sounds intense.
It is, and this powerful novel was then adapted into a BBC television series of the same name in 2024, which demonstrates the hum's enduring narrative power and its ability to explore these deep themes of isolation, belief, community, and the very nature of perceived reality.
And it's not just visual media or print. It's literally in our ears, too, through radio and podcasts, making it a truly multi-sensory mystery that keeps getting discussed.
Exactly. BBC Radio 4 featured an in-depth investigation of the hum phenomena in their Punt PI program, which is sort of a fact-based comedy investigation show, blending humor with serious inquiry into strange phenomena. And the Norwegian state broadcaster, NRK, covered the hum in detail in its Oppdatert podcast back in October 2022. It just further cements its place as this globally recognized, perpetually intriguing enigma.
So the arts and media have clearly embraced the hum as this potent narrative device. What about its presence in music and documentaries? Those forms often delve deeper into these kinds of real-world mysteries, don't they?
For sure. The hum has definitely inspired musicians, maybe underscoring its strangely resonant quality. Canadian musician Dan Griffin has a song simply called The Hum, and the Detroit band Proto-Martyr also has a song titled The Hum on their 2017 album Relatives in Descent, which is almost certainly influenced by the very well-known and impactful Windsor hum, given their proximity to that Windsor-Detroit area.
Makes sense.
In terms of documentaries, Nicholas LaChapelle created a short film called Zug Island, which specifically focuses on the Windsor hum and its eventual connection to the industrial activity there. And Garrett Harkowicz directed that 2019 documentary we mentioned, Doom Vibrations, which centered on Steve Kohlhaas's extraordinary personal independent investigation into the phenomenon over 10 years. It even made it onto popular science lists. Live Science ranked the Taos Hum at 10th place in their top 10 unexplained phenomena. That's a clear indication of its widespread recognition as a genuine modern mystery.
So whether it's through rigorous academic studies, these tenacious local investigations, emotionally charged legal battles, or just its pervasive presence in our pop culture, from speculative sci-fi and psychological thrillers to songs and documentaries, the hum clearly has this tenacious, almost unbreakable grip on our collective imagination.
It absolutely does. The way the hum persists in popular culture really underscores humanity's enduring fascination with mysteries that challenge our fundamental perception of reality. It speaks to something deep within us, I think, that yearns to understand the unexplained, especially when it's something that literally rattles our foundations or vibrates our very beings, as some hearers describe it. It's a compelling testament to the fact that, well, not all sounds are created equal, and certainly not all mysteries are easily solved.
And that brings us toward the end of this particular deep dive into the enigma of the hum. We've journeyed through its perplexing nature, this persistent, low-frequency sound heard by some, but bafflingly not by all, through the incredibly diverse and often conflicting scientific attempts to explain it. We looked at everything from industrial sources and military speculation to internal biological phenomena like tinnitus and SOAEs, and even the animal kingdom. We've also explored its compelling and sometimes quite dark presence in our cultural narratives, seeing how it fuels everything from determined local investigations and costly legal battles to fictional thrillers, urban legends, and profound literary explorations of perception and reality.
And while definitive, universal answers remain tantalizingly elusive for many, perhaps most of these reported hum cases, we really hope this deep dive has provided you, our listener, with a clearer and more comprehensive understanding of the many different facets of this extraordinary phenomenon. Our aim, as always, is to help you sift through complex information, gain quick yet thorough knowledge, and truly appreciate the profound complexity of unexplained phenomena like this one. The hum is just a perfect example of a mystery that reveals how much we still don't know about our world, perhaps even more fundamentally, about ourselves and how we perceive it.
So here's a provocative thought for you to maybe mull over as you go about your day, perhaps in a quiet moment. Given that our own ears, as we learn, can actually generate sounds internally, like those spontaneous otoacoustic emissions, and given that our perception of sound can be so profoundly influenced by psychological factors, by stress, by expectation, and by our external environment, how much of what we think is definitively external sound is actually an intricate, maybe inseparable product of our internal world interacting with the external? And for those who do hear the hum, what new and perhaps unsettling insights might they gain about that fine, often blurry line between what's truly out there in the world and what might be deeply inexplicably generated, or at least perceived, from within us? Perhaps the most enduring mystery here isn't just what the hum is, but what it tells us about the very nature of human perception, consciousness, and our complex inner landscapes.
Keep that curiosity alive, keep asking questions, and continue your own deep dives into the phenomena that intrigue you. Until next time.